everybody. I just want to give a special welcome to everybody watching today. Today is a present for my friend Mason. Because I'm an obsessive guy that loves ramp, I really wanted to make a deck tech video for some changes that I made to Mason's deck from the last episode of Constructive Criticism. So for those who don't know, in the last episode, we brewed decks and talked about them on the show. I wasn't able to make this show, but Mason and I both presented our promise decks, and his deck was Tremors, a worm deck that was able to both use Sifter Wurm and Pelakka Wurm for some worm advantage. So today I just want to talk about what I did to make, well, the deck that I brewed for Mason, kind of based on what he wanted from this deck. So, with that being said, let's get started. So, really quick, going over the deck list, we have 2 Walking Ballista, 1 Shefet Monitor, 1 Pelakka Wurm, 2 Walking Ballista, 1 Shefet Monitor, 3 Pelakka Wurm, 4 Sifter Wurm, 2 Chandra Torch Defiance, 1 Vraska Relic Seeker, 3 Shivan Fire, 1 Abrade, 4 Grow from the Ashes, 1 Sweltering Suns, 1 Hour of Devastation, 4 Hour of Promise, 2 Cut Ribbons, 1 Spring Mind, and 4 Gift of Paradise. Our 26 lands are all Gen lands. There's 4 Blooming Marsh, 2 Canyon Slough, 1 Desert of the Fervent, 4 Forest, 4 Hashep Oasis, 2 Ifnir Deadlands, 2 Mountain, 3 Rootbound Crag, 1 Scavenger Grounds, 2 Sheltered Thicket, and 1 Swamp. Our sideboard is 4 Duress, 1 Arguel's Bloodfast, 2 Doomblade, 1 Sweltering Suns, 1 Hour of Devastation, 1 Vivien Reid, 2 Carnage Tyrant, 1 Sandwurm Convergence, and 2 Struggle Survive. So, let's go over the main deck and talk about a few key things about building ramp decks and what I've done to Mason's deck to help him be able to just win games with a ramp deck. So one of the things that Matt Kling talked about on this week's episode of Constructive Criticism is bridge spells. Bridge spells are the spells that you play to get you to the next part of your game. So sometimes you don't always get to ramp. And one of the things that you want to do is, when you don't have ramp spells, you want spells that are good to bridge you to the next part of the game. This often finds yourself in the world of removal spells. One of the things that you'll notice about things like Volocate Ramp or maybe Titan Shift nowadays is they play things like Lightning Bolt. And you might say, like, why do they play Lightning Bolt? Like, they don't need it. They just want to go this into this into this and win the game. Well, the truth is that sometimes plans don't work out, and you need some contingencies for when those plans don't work out. And that's where sometimes bridge spells can come in. So, some of the bridge spells that this deck plays are Walking Ballista, Shivan Fire, Abrade, Sweltering Suns, and even Hour of Devastation. Cut Ribbons is another one. One of the things that you want to think about when you play in your bridge spells is, why am I playing them at the slots that I'm playing them at? Walking Ballista is a really good bridge spell because it allows you to, maybe you go ramp to 5, but you don't actually have something like an Hour of Promise, but instead you have Sifter Wurm and Vraska in your hand. If you play Walking Ballista, you're able to the next protect yourself for a turn while you go into your Relic Seeker, right? It bridges you to the next part of your game in a real meaningful way. Or maybe even in the same way, this goes ahead and blocks a creature, kills another creature to give you the 2 turns to just hardcast something like your Sifter Wurm. So Walking Ballista does a good job on multiple parts of the game in bridging the game, as well as just being a really good threat at the end of the game itself. Chandra Torch of Defiance is another bridge spell that's really important here. Chandra does 2 things. It ramps you. There's 3 things. It ramps you, it removes creatures, and it wins the game at the end of the game. Chandra is a really good bridge spell for ramp decks, and something that ramp decks have a really hard time with because they're not only good at protecting Chandra. One of the things that this deck does really well, though, it has 3 Shivan Fire, 1 Abrade, and 2 Cut Ribbons main, giving you as many as 6 removal spells that Chandra can just play right off the bat when you plus her in the deck. This is a lot of ways that Chandra will protect herself outside of maybe just minusing to kill a creature on a board that you've already kind of beaten down or things like that. Also, you can double spell with Chandra pretty easily. So there can be turns where, if I don't have that, we talked about not having the Hour of Promise. Instead, we play Chandra on that 5 mana, plus her, and get to cast another 3 mana ramp spell again. So we effectively made Chandra cost 2 mana, put a Planeswalker to 5, maybe played a Gift of Paradise, gaining so much life because they either have to attack Chandra, or, just start winning the game with her. So a really good ramp spell, a really good bridge spell, all around, Chandra is really important to the deck. I want to talk about the removal spells next. We have those 3 Shivan Fires. We have those with that 1 Abrade. We have those 2 Cut Ribbons. Well, what are we doing with them? They're bridge spells too. You have to have some amount of ways to get to the next part of the game, and especially ways to get to the next part of the game that interact with your opponent. One of the things you'll notice that I like about ramp decks is I like playing them as like a rampy control deck. Against the aggro decks, and even against the mid-range decks, this deck actually gets to play the control deck, where you can do a different role against the actual control decks. And I think that the removal spells are an important part of that. Playing so few removal spells, 3 Shivan Fire, 2 Cut Ribbons, and 1 Abrade, only 3 of those cards are dead. It's just the 3 Shivan Fires against control. I can target my own thing and then kill a control player with Cut Ribbons, and I can almost always find a target with it for Abrade because of things like Torrential Growholes and things like that. So this deck has really, really good removal spells in lots of different matchups. The other thing that's important about Shivan Fire is it does dual purpose. It kills early creatures, it kills dragons, it lets me use more of my mana, and then also it's a spell that I can cast off for Grove from the Ashes. Being able to go grab that mountain and leave up Shivan Fire really lets me double spell early, and that's really important. The next thing I want to talk about is the 1 of Shefet Monitor. People hate this, I always include it. I think this card is like an automatic 1 of in any ramp deck. It's a really good bridge spell because it digs you deeper while ramping even things like Vraska. And then also it's just a really big creature that some decks are just going to be like, can I beat a 6/5 right now? And that's okay too. The ramp spells are the next thing that we should talk about. We have the 4 Grow from the Ashes, we have the 1 Spring Mine, and the 4 Gift of Paradise. One of the coolest things about one of the changes that I've really adopted here is I do think that Spring Mine, and I do think that Cut Ribbons are really good cards in your deck. So I want 4 Gift of Paradise to make sure that I enable both of those cards. And that's really powerful. It's like a really, really good effect. Gift of Paradise is very good in this deck because it ramps you right away into your Hour of Promise, into fixing your mana for Hour of Devastation. It makes it easier to cast Pelakka Wurm, where maybe sometimes you might have trouble having triple green in this 3-color deck. So Gift of Paradise makes a lot of sense. I think the ramp spells are perfect. I think that those Hour of Promises are going to be super active in this deck with 4 Hashep Oasis just off the bat. Yes, and I think that if you wanted to, you could even build kind of a different sideboard around the type of lands you might want to grab with this. So, next up, let's talk really quickly about the sideboard and kind of finish up there. I guess in the main deck we know what we're doing, right? We're getting card advantage by scrying tons of cards with Sifter Wurm and getting a huge advantage from Pelakka Wurm, and we're beaten down with worms. So there's your worms, man. 7 worms, 7 mana, plus a bunch of other stuff. Let's talk about the sideboard really quick. So we have a lot of cards that look like they come in a lot of matchups, and it's because they can come in a lot of matchups. One of the ways that I talked about playing this is playing it as a control deck. So I want to sideboard as though I have a control deck and not a ramp deck. And what that means is I usually only want to be boarding out maybe 1 ramp spell. And if I'm doing that, what do I want my sideboard to look like? And really cool with all of this is this sideboard can look kind of like a mid-range sideboard to attack control decks and other mid-range decks. We have 2 Struggle Survive that can come in against both big creature decks as well as small creature decks. Because of the way that our deck plays out, we're able to just say, I need to get a max amount of removal. And then in certain matchups, we bring in that other Sweltering Suns and that other Hour of Devastation, depending on how big or little the deck gets, to give us some card advantage as well as some backup to that Struggle Survive. Next up, we have the big stuff, right? So we got the 2 Carnage Tyrant, we got the Vivien Reid, we got the Sandwurm Convergence, and we got the Arguel Bloodfast. And these are kind of a mishmash of things that all of these cards are good in multiple ways. There's going to be times where Sandwurm Convergence is like for the mid-range deck, like you just want to be bigger than, right? And Carnage Tyrant is for the same thing. Whereas I don't want Sandwurm Convergence against control, but I do want Carnage Tyrant against control. So it's kind of splitting your effects to make sure you get the right number of stuff for each individual matchup that you consider playing. And that you get to diversify the type of things you're playing, right? I can just play 4 Carnage Tyrant, but instead I get to get an extra effect from Vivien Reid, killing artifacts and enchantments. I get Sandwurm Convergence, which is good in, you know, a more grindy, mid-rangey matchup. And then Arguel's Bloodfast is good against both, and Vivien Reid is good against both. So you kind of get to split those out. And then you have Doomfall for some extra removal, as well as Duress for some extra discard. And, you know, in certain matchups, maybe you need Doomfall and Struggles to survive, and you go like a true mid-range deck. Although sometimes maybe you just want Doomfall for the discard and you don't want Struggles to survive, like Control. So that's kind of what I'm thinking with a sideboard. This is what I'm thinking for this deck. Thank you everybody for watching. This is for you, Mason. I hope this is helpful. I'd love to see you play Tremors of Jund on stream, and we'll see you guys all next week.